And then that sets the intention for every day as well. So when I wake up, what's my intention today? What sort of impact do I want to make? Who do I want to meet? What's this meeting going to be about? And I think that that's really important too, that you're starting then to be able to set what your intention is and live a life of intention.
Welcome to the Success Times Happiness podcast, a platform dedicated to engaging discussions with inspiring individuals aimed at nurturing personal development. I'm Richard Thompson, your host, a father, entrepreneur, world champion Ultraman, and passionate about all things high performance. Our mission is to empower both ourselves and you to unlocking our fullest potential, recognizing that this life is no dress rehearsal. While I may not have all the answers, this show serves as our collective journey to uncover them. Today's guest is Lorna Willis. Lorna is a tour de force when it comes to empowering women to succeed in business. She's a mother of 3 girls, a public speaker, mentor, and an extremely successful property developer, currently finishing off a 100-plus unit complex called Lorna here on the Sunshine Coast. Expect to learn about her journey to business success, the ceilings she's had to break to get there, and her 5 key essentials for any woman to achieve in this world. Here we go. You are a trailblazer, a glass ceiling smasher. You're a mum of 4 daughters. You are, as far as I can tell, the best example or a thought leader in empowering women or that movement. How would you describe your mission statement?
I believe that I want to wake women up and shake women up. There's a lot that is just left to chance. There's so many old-fashioned ways of thinking that we're still adopting, and I think we need to break through those barriers, challenge ourselves, not just ourselves, but society in some ways, so that we can be what we're born to be.
Do you think that's like an underlying or at least an innate predisposition from females, that this is like it's almost in DNA that they need to be woken up?
But I know in my own experience, it was like growing up on a farm. I was expected to be the boy, go out and drive the truck, cart the hay, milk the cows, hay season, whatever, you were all hands on. But then you'd go inside and then you were expected to help dish up the food, do the dishes and all that sort of thing. So there was this real double standard when the men sat down that I was now back in place as a woman. So I always had this little irritating area. It's like, this isn't fair. Yeah. It's just not right.
So was that at the direction of Dad or?
Yeah. And it's all hands on deck. Like you understand it. It's just, it's that double standard sort of thing where I didn't get to come in and sit down and get my food dished up. It was like, now put on your female hat. You're the woman in the house.
Now. Yeah.
That was in me. That's something that I had to deal with personally growing up. And of course, sometimes that comes out and it's like, underneath your seething. So, for example, when I went to, at a late age, decided what I wanted to be when I grew up, at the age of 30, after having my 4 children, I decided I wanted to get into architectural design. So, which was a big step for me because, I actually got encouraged to leave school when I was 16 because I didn't fit in the pigeonholes. And so I was called into the headmaster's office and, if you leave, we'll give you a pass if you don't come back. But I was one of those people that just couldn't see the sense in a lot of stuff I was being taught. So I, at the age of 30, decided here I am going back. I finally worked out after building and designing our first 2 homes that I wanted to be an architectural designer. So I rock up and I was so nervous. And as you are, after being out of the school system and everything else for so long, and when I sat down and I was interviewed, they go through the interview, so you're a mother of 4, right, and you're working part-time, and you're running your family business, right. You're never going to cope. You're rejected. So I got rejected on the basis that I was a woman doing all those things and I wouldn't handle the homework. So what I did was I left thinking that here's this red rag coming out, right?
Yeah.
The double standard thing. How do you know what I can handle or can't handle? So I went round the back door and got into night school. And getting into night school, I got my foot in the door. That's all I needed. And then it was like, okay, I was producing really high quality work. I'd stay up all night, put the kids to bed and the kids would wake up the next morning. I'm still at the drawing board because I was proving proving that I was deserved of being there. Eventually what happened is I got an opening in the day classes and lo and behold, I'm in the class fronting this, Paul was his name, who had said, I couldn't cope with the homework.
Yeah.
I ended up becoming his exemplary student because in the end, it was male dominated. I was the only woman in the class. He ended up going, if this woman with 4 kids raising, and a husband and doing a part-time job can get her homework in and get high distinctions, then so can you, it was a total flip. But you have to battle that as a woman. And that shouldn't happen, but it is. It's the real world. So you have to earn the respect, and it takes a lot more hard work to earn respect.
What do you think are the limitations that impact women now?
I think there's still a lot of domination in terms of boys' club mentality, if I can put it that way. And it's happening in every industry. We can't ignore it. It's there. Whether you're in council, whether you're in nursing, whatever, there's that there. And I think it's about we need to step up and value ourselves a lot more. And even if it's a silent value, we don't have to get into big fist fights or anything like that, but we have to hold that value and know our worth. And that's the part I think that we've got to smash through the barrier and go, you know what, I can do this, and you know what, I can do it silently, I can do it loud, whatever I choose, but I have a right and I have a skill set, or I have the confidence just to deliver what I know I was born to do.
Yeah, and it would seem to me that because of the innate nurturing feeling or duty that sits with many women, that that they have to hold that, and that in itself may be a detriment in terms of their self-worth of trying to achieve something else. And this is all very stereotypical, or at least trying to generalize, but the masculine trait is not that. And so that you almost can go and achieve something in life without the feeling of needing to be that support.
Yeah, so when I went to go back and study doing architectural design, the mindset of the families were, you shouldn't be doing that. Women don't do that. You should be home looking after your family and your husband, that sort of mentality. But I also see it in lots of other areas where, look, I've got some great men around me. So, there's no way knowing this is a put down on men. But women will be, in most cases, the nurturers of the children, right? But then there's another segment in life where women become the nurturers of the parents.
Yeah.
Right? So we've got the segment when the kids are young and growing up where we put ourselves second, third, fourth, depending on how many kids you've got, and sometimes your husband's one of your kids. And then you've got that next sector, because both my parents had Parkinson's disease, for example. So there was a lot of nurturing around that, looking after them, even though I was trying to grow a business at the time. So my husband didn't step in to do any of that because it wasn't expected of him to do that. He'd help, lift things, but not actually be the nurturer and making sure they got the food and all the things that they need. And likewise with his parents, it was, the women stepped in and did that. So I think there's this, and again, we're generalising, it's not for everyone, but it's innate in us. And we want to do it, but we're sacrificing ourselves or our position at the same time.
Yeah, and that may be the reason, a fair reason, why the self-doubt or the self-worth piece comes into it. Because it's like, surely not me, because I've got to look after the 4 kids at home. Surely I can't go to school and become an architect because I've got all of these obligations.
One of the things too I notice is that women in particular carry more guilt, right? We feel guilty if we're at work when we should be home with the kids. We feel guilty when we're home with the kids when we should be at work. And I hear this time and time and time and time again. And it doesn't seem to affect men as badly as it does with us, because I think that's just inert in us, the nature of us. So we have this carrying the guilt all the time, and that holds us back. So breaking free of that and just being 100% in the moment of when you're with your kids and 100% in the moment of when you're at work or anything else that you're doing, I think that's a real skill that you've got to develop and not carry the guilt.
I think that's a great skill in general. That's not nothing, because you are predisposed to care about everything, right? And to hold every weight of every problem that your child has, and then you try to bring that and go to work and be professional at work and not worry about it. And then, shit, did I take the clarinet to school? Or you have so many things. And it's almost like you have to, if you want to be successful, and this is the reason why we're chatting today, is what are these essential elements that you need? But I would have thought being able to compartmentalize and almost to say, I'm a mum, or I've got all these obligations outside of work or outside of the business. Once I'm in the business, I've got to just be right in the moment and utilize my time as best as possible.
Yeah.
Without that guilt.
And what makes it interesting, because there's men stepping into that role now, right? With more divorces and that happening, there's more men stepping in and maybe having their children a lot more. You think you're going to work, you think you're going to be able to give it 100%, but there will be disruptions in your day because the school suddenly calls.
Yeah, yeah.
And so compartmentalising is the intention, but it's not always the way.
No. And I think you're right. I think the way people and jobs and business see that and try, and they need to be malleable to manage that at the moment now. And probably because it was advanced because the males needed that to be flexible. And so then obviously the corporations go, well, we have to do it now. It's not just for the females. But what I'm inspired by you, Lorna, is you were there breaking that ceiling down decades ago when it was really less favorable on a society norm, right?
And I guess that's because I came from that farm background too, was like, that was the red flag inside me. It was like, don't tell me what I can't do.
Yeah.
I can do it. Like I was riding motorbikes at the age of 8, but I couldn't touch the ground. So my dad would start me off on the motorbike and I'd just go off riding around the track and then he'd come back later for me and, grab me. But stepping outside your comfort zone is too a very big thing that a lot don't want to do. And you've got to be prepared to exercise that muscle of stepping outside that comfort zone, whatever it is, whether it's emotional or physical, and it's a mindset. So breaking through barriers really comes down to exercising a muscle that's in your head.
Along this path of the red rag and you going after it, what's been has there been any moments where you've gone, like you've doubted yourself heavily?
Absolutely. And that's one of my key points is you will have self-doubt. There are times like, let's talk about Luana, right? For an example. So we have the all 9 properties purchased now. Luana Beach Resort, I'll just let people know It's 112 apartments, 5 commercial that we're coming to closing out now. We've only got about, 3 months to go and we should have it finished. But that's been one heck of a journey. And I talk about it other times, but the piece I'll talk to you about in relation to the question you asked was that we had the parcels of land under contract. So then we got an architect involved, and it was a big Brisbane architect and good firm. And so when they came in and we gave them the brief, they take that away, they come back. And I had calculated in my head, and we'd also done feasibilities based on a certain number of apartments, right? Depending on the sizes. So we knew we should be able to get about 110 to 115. So when the architect came back and he rolled out the plans and he goes, we've got 77. And it's like, oh my goodness. And the first thing you do is like doubt yourself, right? How did I stuff that up? How did I get it so wrong? And so that's the innate thing that we do to ourselves. And so this is in a big boardroom table. I've got all the men around the table from, finances to town planners to whatever else. We're going for a big discussion here around these new plans that are coming in, concept plans. And it's like they're just looking around at each other and going, doesn't stack.
There's 40 or 50 missing here. Yeah.
Just doesn't work until one of the guys actually said, not a deal. Doesn't work. So with that, I'm like, kicking myself under the table sort of thing. And then I'm starting to think, hang on, it just doesn't make sense that you've only got 77 on there. And so I started to rely on my skill set and my knowledge, and I knew what had been achieved on this site next door. So all that started to come to fruition. And I go, do you mind if I take those plans? I'm going to work on them over the weekend and get back to you. So, they're all looking at this guy, we're paying $200K for these plans, right? So I take them away, borrow a friend's drawing board, because that's how I learnt back in the day on the drawing board. And I started doing the measure up, and it's like, I've got a scale rule and going into it, and it's like, hang on, the site's right, but the scale for the actual buildings is not correct. So I started to do the cut and paste and patch and white out and all the rest of it, put it back together. And I go back to the guys and it's my turn to roll out the plan, my patchwork plan. And I go, guys, I reckon I can get 117 on. Well, I remember the project manager, didn't last very long, but he just rolls the eyes and like, oh, this woman, you know, what would she know over someone far superior? And with the architect being there, he was a bit surprised, a bit stunned. So he takes it away. 2 weeks later, he comes back and he goes, I fixed the problem. We've got 117, right? And I'm like, let it go. Just let it go. Let it go. It really doesn't matter anyway. If we've got 117, I'm okay with that.
But it's the same teacher when you were going to school saying Lorna's the exemplary student, not anyone knowing that the fact that he stopped you from going in the first place.
So that is what I mean about self-doubt. Yes, absolutely. There's times when you have self-doubt, but it's also about flexing that muscle, because when you go into self-doubt, there's fear. It comes in, and that's an emotional block that stops you from thinking rationally. And so that's another thing different with men and women. Men, I find, can be more like water off a duck's back. You know, it doesn't, yeah, okay, well, we'll deal with it. But they still think rationally. Women engage in this, oh my goodness, and the emotions all come flooding in where we're not thinking clearly. So you have to sort of get used to flicking that switch and going, hang on, stop, assess it, analyse it, and then might have to step back before you step forward. Yeah.
All right. So let's get into Lorna Willis's 5 essentials to succeed in business as a woman.
Okay. So let's talk about, first of all, waking ourselves up a little bit. So can I ask your age?
I am 39.
There you go. Good. I'm a little bit older than that. So maybe it's better if we take my age. Okay, so if I have the opportunity to live to 100, right, that means I've got 23 more summers left in me. That's it. 23 more summers. Now, if my highest values are spending time with my daughters, we get together every second year because they're all over the different parts of the world. So that means I've got what left, 16, 17 of those occasions left. And I think we need to all assess ourselves where we are and what we've got left, because that sets a framework then for, hang on, what's important? Because we can get so bogged down in not balancing our lives. So we might be talking about business, but life isn't all about business. It's about the values and the important things we have in our lives. So that is my first reality check for everyone. It's just like, wake up, work out how long you think you're going to live, calculate it out. What do you want to do with those years you've got left?
Yeah. It sounds contrite almost, but by being so blunt about that. And I think everyone puts that under the rug because we'll live forever. Almost that sort of that sort of feeling.
Yeah.
Whereas almost if you were given a date, even if it is 100, a high being said that is your date, then I think everyone's decisions would be a hell of a lot different than just this sort of subconscious belief that we'll just live forever.
Yeah. So I just calculated my age wrong, but I just threw that in for a bit of a stir. But I want to bring that message home, that reality check.
Yeah, I like that as a first place to go.
Yeah. The next thing I would suggest is you actually do an audit on yourself in all areas of your life, right? So we're talking business today, but let's do an audit, because I think everyone's just running, not everyone. I think a lot of people run on automatic pilot and they don't think about, where am I at? What is it I want? So let me give you an example of one area. Women in particular should be doing audits in money. So Janet Holmes à Court, who I had the pleasure of listening to, was married to Robert Holmes à Court, one of the richest men in Australia. Now, when he died, he didn't leave a will. You would have thought he had a good lawyer. Maybe he should have met you. Anyway, he didn't leave a will. Now, what she said was, I knew he had money from the banks, But I didn't know 13 banks could come and knock on my door and ask for the money back, or how am I going to manage things? Now, you think that's back in that day, but what really shocks me is even when I'm talking to young married women now, or partnered women or whatever, and you say to them, how are your finances? What have you got in equity or whatever else, because you're talking about property, and they'll go, oh, no, my husband looks after all that. It's like, you've put yourself in such a vulnerable position. We don't know what's ahead of you. You don't know if it's, accident, divorce, illness, whatever. Things happen, life happens, and you don't even know where the bank accounts are, let alone passwords or how to get into them. It just shouldn't happen these days, but it's still happening. So, the audit you're doing is like on everything. Is there a will in place? What if something happens to you? What are your wishes? And women who are a bit older, they find themselves in such a vulnerable position at 40, 50, 60 if there's a divorce, but then they start to think about, whatever I've got left, I want to protect that for my kids. But they don't know how to do that, and about bloodline trust or testamentary trust, those sorts of things. And, just making sure that whatever they're passing down, because I've seen a lot of farmers end up with their son's wife ending up with what they thought was a legacy to their kids. So there's all these different things, but even on your health, do an audit on your health. Yeah. What should you be doing for your future? Okay, you want to live to 100? Well, then what does that look like? If you're not looking after it here, it's not going to happen there. It could be an audit on the time that you're spending and where you're spending that time.
Time management.
Yeah.
Yeah. Relationships.
Yes.
Career, all those different elements of life. Just do a full audit.
Yeah. And you can do it one at a time. It's not like you have to go in and do the whole wheel of life. Spirituality and everything else. You do that one at a time and just work through it. But I take time at the start of the year too. And when everyone's out there doing the crazy holidays, I actually pull myself back in and I do a bit of an audit on my business, and where do I want to take it? What is my intention? And then that sets the intention for every day as well. So when I wake up, what's my intention today? What sort of impact do I want to make? Who do I want to meet? What's this meeting going to be about? And I think that that's really important too, that you're starting then to be able to set what your intention is and live a life of intention.
Yeah, I think that's so valuable and so important in achieving is that intention. I don't know whether it's a fear of missing the mark or a fear of not understanding how much potential you have as a woman or as a man, but by setting an intention of saying, this is where I'm at, this is the stock take, this is the position, but I'm not comfortable here, but I want to be here. Like I want to go from A to B.
Yeah.
And then, but it's scary because you're putting yourself out, even just by yourself, you're putting yourself out there of saying, well, I'm not comfortable with where I am and I want to be here. And so it's like, but that's so important, right? Setting that intention and going, that's where I'm headed. And you can, as you said, Lorna, you can micro that down to a daily intention, because you want to go to B from A, but to do that, it's just a lot of days banked up, consistent approach to everything. And then if you can micromanage the day with that intention, then you're much more likely to achieve where you're going.
Yeah, absolutely. And so if you look at Lorna Beach Resort for an example of that was an intention. We first got the first couple of blocks of land. Yep, we're going to do this development. We had no idea it was going to take 7 years. So there's been a lot of intention to get there. But if we didn't have that end game in mind, then everything that we've been hit with, from COVID to building prices increasing to builders going into liquidation to finance being hard to get with interest rates hiking, all the different challenges we have had along the way, knowing that that was our intention. And it was really funny, in one of the meetings we had, we're going out the other side of the aftermath of COVID, and that we'd gone through all that, the building cost hikes and the interest rises, and my mentor had also passed away and I'd been diagnosed with suspected lung cancer. So there's a whole gamut of things happening. And the guys said to me, maybe we should be shelving our deal. Maybe we should shelve this project, which a lot of developers did at the time. And I turned to the guys and I go, guys, you can't be half pregnant. We are pregnant.
We're all in.
And we're delivering this baby.
Yeah.
And that's been the intention the whole way along, because it would have been easy to give up so many times. But you've got to think of it like being pregnant. You can't just start something and say, oh, don't want to go there anymore.
Yeah.
Don't want to deliver this baby.
Yeah.
You've got to set that intention and deliver it.
Yeah. And I think from at least my own personal experience is that you set that intention more often than not, it'll come to be. If you truly believe in it and that's where you're headed and you bring it back to the daily practice. Yeah, I love that. And almost to certainly think about goal setting, I like to look at it as a target rather than a goal, because the goal itself is the environment to which you need to set to achieve the target. So it's setting in, so you have that intention of where you want to go, and that's the target. But the goal is to create a life that allows the consistency and the work to allow the work to ensue to achieve the target. And that's where it comes back to what your point of intention and bringing that to the daily practice.
Yeah.
Love it. All right. Number 3.
Doing a deep dive into perhaps even your past, that what was it that brought you joy when you were a child? I believe we're all blessed with gifts, that natural talents. We might have to shape them and sharpen them and get educated and knowledge, but there is something there that is natural for you. For example, being born and raised in a rickety old house and, with no running hot water and no electricity and an outside dunny and all that sort of stuff, the intention back then in my little mind was, I just one day want to have a nice house. That was, so I would play with shapes in hay bales and create cubbies in the haystack. But I was playing with spaces back then, or tree cubbies. And when I look back, I can see that used to bring me so much joy, because I was actually designing back then in that childhood of something that I was passionate about, didn't recognize it, didn't understand what it was. But when you think about, everyone's got some beautiful gifts. They've got some, whether it's a communication gift, whether they're great with their hand crafts, or whether they're good with a plough paddock, out in the paddock. Everyone's got it, and it might be that they just need to develop it. But first you've got to identify it. And I think if you can go back and think, and it might not be for business even. It might be just something you enjoyed back then that can actually help you on the other side of the scale and bring that balance. So that's one of the things that I think we don't give enough attention to. Okay. Like, what makes your heart sing?
Yeah.
Yeah.
I love it that for you, that's carried through your whole life to be able to make shapes, design, and then you're living in property, right?
Yeah. So I'm still enjoying that now, and seeing Lorna come to fruition.
Less hay bales.
Thank goodness. But it's still about shapes and flow, all those things that you need to make it feel like home. And so colours even, how does colour affect? I'm interested in that, learning sophistication around what colours can do to the mind. So they're all things that I naturally gravitated towards. Interior design, I did that course as well. Why not, right?
Sure.
But you can see that that's where it's came from, being a child growing up and knowing that I was passionate about just this, I want a nice home, going on to design my first home and build it. So I think, everyone's got gifts and we're meant to deliver them. And that's what we need to be doing, is honing in on that and then going, okay. But the other thing that I've also been gifted with is teaching, but not as a teacher. So I help women understand property, investing, where their money, their budgets and those sorts of things, need developing so that they can actually set themselves up financially, whether it be independent or within a relationship. It's not isolated, but we do work with women because we think that they really need some support in an area that's predominantly male-dominated in property. And that's another thing I love and I enjoy. But then I was doing that for kids at school. I'd always, try and help them where I could too. And that's just something that's natural in me. Someone else, it might be art, Mind you, I don't mind that either.
Like, it sounds like in your childhood, it was sort of those virtues of, well, for you, you're doing everything. You're playing the male in the farm and the female in the house. How did those values change and how you were trying to impart them onto your girls growing up?
Well, I certainly taught my children, all daughters obviously, that they could be anything they wanted to be, subject to obviously but honing in on their gifts, because we're not meant to be some things in life. So it's about honing in on those gifts, but empowering them to think for themselves. So every one of my daughters, I just wanted to bless them with the strength that they had and support them on that journey. So they're all different, even though born from the same parents. You would think they'd, head in the same direction. None of them followed me. None of them followed their dad, but they're, teachers, they're Commonwealth Bank managers, they're, their skill sets are what they've developed because of understanding that they've just got to back themselves. If this is your passion, back yourself and follow that heart. Is
that something that you, on a conscious front, like sat down and would talk to them about that growing up? Or is that something that something would happen in the oval at the school, or something happened at school for them, and then you said, well, this is the way you've got to react?
No, it's really interesting because I didn't know about personal development until I was in my 30s, and really found my place, I guess, with wanting to learn that stuff, and I would absorb it. So if they were in the car with me, I were having to absorb it. Mom, what's this stuff we got to listen to? It's like, this will be helpful. So then it stemmed conversation from that, and we'd have D&Ms around that. But I also made sure every evening we would be sitting at the dinner table together, and we would go around the table, what's happened today, how'd you help someone, or what was a blessing today, that sort of thing. And it's just traditional family values. We're having the fabric of that broken down, sadly. But if you can, as a mother, as a father, hold that together, it's so important. So when those little discussions come up, they'll trigger off each other. So you can imagine 6 of us sitting around the table. They trigger off each other, and you end up in these really deep conversations. It's like, but why can't she be that? If that's what she wants to be, what's going to hold her back? Or, this is how I helped someone today. Oh, that was awesome. What else could we do to help? It's all of those round table conversations, I call them. And as you know, with our meetups that we do with the WOW property women, we sit around a big table.
Yeah.
And we keep it conversational. Mm-hmm. And I think that's really important. We don't talk at anyone. It's having a conversation.
Yeah, I love that. Yeah, I mean, we have 6 around our table each night, and everyone has a turn of telling us what the high was of the day, what the low was the day, and what was something that was unique or funny. And that absolutely sparks everyone to jump in. It's a ritual.
Yes.
We do it. And it takes, to get through 6 and everyone's commentary around each seat, it takes all dinner. By the time we finish, we've eaten our meal. But that's what we do. It's really lovely.
Isn't it great, though? Because you're finding out things you would never have found out.
Yeah.
Right?
And I'm all boys. They're all boys. So I can't speak for having girls yet, even though I've got one on the way. But you very quickly learn that you don't ask questions when you pick them up at school because they're not ready.
Yeah.
It takes a couple of hours in their own little subconscious to process it, and then come dinner time, sometimes before, they'll eke out a story, but certainly at dinner, they're ready to share, and they share at their own volition, and they share in their own time. And very early on, like when my eldest went to prep, it'd be like, I'm wanting to know what happened today, Nothing, didn't learn anything.
One word answers.
Yeah, if you're lucky. But then, a few hours go by, you don't push it, and then they're like, oh, this happened. And you're like, oh, that's interesting.
Yeah, and then they trigger off each other.
Yeah. And it's wonderful, right? Love that. All right, number 4.
Number 4 is backing yourself, as I explained before, with the situation with the architect and myself. If I hadn't backed myself, that deal was dead, gone.
Everyone's walking away.
If I hadn't backed myself going into the interview for architectural design, and thinking, no, you can't tell me so I had to back myself. Now, this happens time and time and time again, but it's really interesting because what we do is we intend to take it first no. We don't think, what else could I do? What else can I try? And be creative about, I might not have gone in the front door. How can I get in the back door? I think, society in general, it's just like we go into this autopilot. Oh, no, we've got a rejection there. Council's not going to let us do that. Wow, if you've seen the stuff we've got through council, as one example, it's like it's negotiation.
Everything's a negotiation.
It's negotiation. So if you want to, you get a rejection here, then it's okay, well, let's talk about that. Let's communicate that and back yourself, because if you're really determined to get somewhere in life and in business in particular, we can all say, oh, there's too many out there in the marketplace. This is never going to work. well, what's your unique position? And then back yourself in that unique position. You are unique because of the circumstances you've had in life that makes you so different to everybody else. And there's going to be someone out there that needs you. And it's understanding that this is, and it leads me to the last point, it's not about you. This journey in life is about what is your purpose, but it's a greater purpose, it's a higher purpose. And if we can leave a legacy that we've impacted in some way, shape or form to change people's lives, or one of the things that we did with Lorna Beach Resort when we had the 9 sites, this is while we're going through DA, houses are still there. I'd said to the ladies in the Well Property Women, if one of those become vacant, what I'd like to do is actually help the homeless. Right? So one did become vacant, so I put the word out there to the ladies, and it was an older home. It was a bit of a mess being left because they knew that was going to be demolished. So I put the word out to all the ladies and go, right, we need beds, we need blankets, we need sheets, we need cutlery, crockery, food, stuff for the fridge, stuff for the lights, cleaning. So we quickly, it was coming up to Christmas, and we had about 2.5 weeks, and we had people just dropping stuff off here and others cleaning and all the rest of it. 4:15 Christmas Eve, we handed the keys over to the Department of Housing, who had identified the lady that was going to go into that house, who was there at the time. And what I felt was just like, wow, that is amazing. The heartfelt of that was because what we'd done for her was she just needed a hand up.
Yeah.
That's all she needed, because she went on to do a course in aged care, get a job, and then be able to afford rent. It changed her life. Now, I'll never see her again.
Sure.
We'll never know the final outcome of all of that, but we know that we made a difference. And this is where I believe the purpose is bigger than ourselves. We're not here, we're leaving beautiful children as a legacy, but what else? We help with the Destiny Rescue as well, just to identify another group that rescue children out of sex trafficking. So what is it that we could be doing and leaving a legacy, and how all people say at our funeral, well, we're not going to be there, so it's not going to worry us. But what we'd like to think is that our time on earth meant something, because we're all looking for meaning. We ask ourselves somewhere in our lifetime, what is life about? What does all this mean? So make it mean something, whether it's one life or 100 lives that you touch. Make it mean something.
Give back, fill your cup up by being generous.
Yeah, and that was a real cup filler. I love my kids and spending time with my kids. I love friends and all the rest of it, but that, I can't describe how I felt that Christmas Eve, knowing we'd put a roof over someone's head who was homeless. And that was just, all Christmas, I just sat there I felt blessed that we had the opportunity to do that for someone else.
So good. After Lorna, what is Lorna?
Don't even talk about it.
It's been some time, but it's not nothing, right? It's a $100 million plus multi-story, multi-building development. You've done that. Well, let's say once it's done.
We're not quite there yet.
No, but once it's done, you'll have a rest, presumably.
Not really.
Okay.
No. I found out I'm not wired that way.
No, sure.
I won't be doing any more big developments like that. I don't need to spend 10 years with, huge loans and having the risk and all that goes with it. But I am certainly keen to grow the Well Property Women and the courses we have within that, the mentorship to help women particularly grow their own independence and financial independence as well. So I'm going down that path more. I'm doing a lot of keynote speaking, just sharing what I have in terms of my skill set, where it could be used, my values, if it fits with someone else. And that way people can – sometimes people don't know what they don't know in terms of they don't even know what they're looking for. But once you start telling your stories and they start going, oh, wow, how did you do that? How did you achieve that? And the last speech I gave for Destiny Rescue was to a general public, men and women. But I had them all coming up different, like concrete cutter coming up. My wife and I were hanging off every word you said, right through to women who are going, that was so inspiring. How did you grow that, a strength muscle, how did you develop that? And so there's a lot of education that comes through all walks of life in terms of what your, journey has been about that you can share. And perhaps there's just some golden nuggets in that can help others.
I love that. What's your position regarding risk? Not to generalize either, but the propensity to invest or to get a leg up with wealth, there's got to be some element of risk.
Absolutely there is. But life is risk, isn't it?
Yeah.
And we do a profile on risk assessment with the ladies because everyone's different.
Mm-hmm.
And I think the best thing you do with risk, because you have to take it. You can't not take risk in any area of your life. Like cross a road, you're taking a risk, right? Yep. But in property investing, you have to take a risk, and then it's what level of risk. My advice is always about get a good team around you and mitigate your risk. Mm-hmm. You'll never be without risk, but you mitigate it. And it's the strength of your team. Like I believe you should have people a lot smarter than you in your team.
Yep.
And that's what I've done, surrounded myself with smart people so that I can ask them, what's your view on that? What's your view on that? And go around and ask them. But at the end of the day, you're making the decision. Mm. And so I used to do things that took other people like out of their comfort zone. And I don't know how many men have said to me, "You've got balls." It's like, no, I've checked. I don't have balls, but I do have faith, and I put the right people around me, and the strength comes from those people as well. Get a mentor or two mentors or three mentors, depending on where you want to go. But mentorship is underrated. Like you need someone who's walked that path before you. So I had an old mate, Don Moffat, who had done a lot of development on the Sunshine Coast. He was my mentor until sadly he passed away 18 months ago. But I borrowed some of his courage. I borrowed some of his strength. I borrowed his team. That's what you can adopt. So it's really about the team, and I rave on about team all the time. It's, get a good lawyer, get a good accountant, but they've got to be someone who's familiar with property, right? Because a lot of people go, oh, yeah, I've got this accountant and he seems really good. Okay, did you ask him how many property investments he's got? Like, has he done any development? Because all that's relevant, right? That's right. So if they haven't got that experience, same as a financial planner, rarely will they talk property, but they'll put you in shares or a lot of other things, including insurance. So not to put any of those expertise down, but you really, if you're going to be going into that world of property investing, you need the right team. And that's part of what, I've grown up here on the Sunshine Coast with a really strong, good team.
Yeah, I love that. And I think also the risk bit, which is what you're alluding to with the experts in your corner and the mentorship, the mentors that have walked that path, is education around what you're going into. So people don't see crossing the road as a high enough risk not to cross it because they know what the factors are. They've done it themselves. They understand there's a light, there's red lights, there's traffic going both ways.
But when they were first young, their mother was holding their hand to make sure.
Yeah, and children are naive and they don't see the risk for what it's worth. But certainly, but if you try to cross a highway with no lights, same objective, but you're not going to do that because you're not experienced. You don't know the risks. You don't know all of the factors. So when I think certainly more educated you need to be with respect to the risk decision, the more likely the general public will say you can really handle a lot of risk. But I don't know whether that's necessarily true in the sense that even with Lorna, there is risk involved, but you have done enough education, you got enough team, enough support, enough mentorship to go, no, I can, that's a comfortable decision.
Yeah, and you can't anticipate all your risk, right? And this is where a lot of people stop because they need all the answers to that end.
It's
and we find this all the time. And this is where psychology comes in, emotional intelligence comes in, because they think if I can't measure every step of the way to get me to that end, then I can't do it.
Yeah.
But you've just got to take the first step because something's going to change and shift. You can't go into property knowing all the answers.
Because if you did, everyone would do it. If everything was known or every known quantity, there was no risk, everyone would do it.
Absolutely. And if, statistics prove there's only about 2% of Australians that own more than 5 investment properties. But why? Why? Because that's your retirement. You should be able to do that, right? But going back to the risk factor, I think it's that unknown that's the problem for most people. So mitigating the unknown is getting people that know and have been there before you.
Yeah.
And that team is why I keep coming back to it. It's like I didn't know how to do a high rise. I hadn't done one before, but I had people in my team that had.
Yes. Yeah, 100%. Like I would say before the firm, I was somewhat risk adverse. And then I just consciously over the 2 years got more and more progressed people around me in my corner that have gone through, maybe not necessarily the law firms. And there's been a couple of very, very successful lawyers who have owned firms in my corner, just to be able to lean on them and them saying, oh yeah, this is all normal. The risk that you're putting yourself, or if it's a lease you're signing, or this is the payroll number, that's all normal. It's okay. It'll be okay. And there is risk that it all doesn't work.
Yeah.
But as you say, across the road, there's a risk.
As you build that risk muscle, we call it a risk muscle, you start to identify too. When I first met you, I could identify whether you knew what you're talking about or not, right? And it's just one of those things that come as you get experience and knowledge. And then with knowing, who you can trust, you start to open up more, and then they're able to share more with you and advice and that sort of thing, because that takes relationship. So that's another part that comes together. And long-term relationship is really valuable. If you've got a good lawyer, if you've got a good accountant, you can just pick up the phone, hey, I'm in this situation. Can you help out here? We need to get this into council today, or we need to get it to the auditor today, whatever it is. So team and relationship is really important in my view.
Love that so much. This has been fabulous, Lorna. Thank you so much for coming on.
Pleasure.
If there's one takeaway for women out there, is it just to wake up?
It's wake up, do an audit, think about how much longer you've got on this planet, and assess what's important to you and your loved ones, but what's your gift as well, and how can you serve that out to the universe.
And be bold, right? To be really bold with what your future potential or what you could achieve.
Yeah.
Don't be limiting yourself.
Yeah.
I love it. All right, before you go, the final 5 questions. How does success look like for you? How do you define success?
Success for me is something that's ongoing. It's not like
not a destination.
Finishing Luana. You could say, well, that was a great success, but that's just part of a journey. Success to me is more about having a life that's fulfilled in all areas.
Love it.
And I'm still working on that.
I think we all are, right?
Yeah.
But that's what's enjoyable, because it is so, we get lots of chances and we get to fine tune the way we do life all the time.
Yes.
Which is great. How do you define happiness for yourself?
I would say that there is something heartfelt, like in that event where, handing the keys over to the homeless lady, like that to me was just happiness, but gratitude in having the opportunity to do something like that. So I was a very happy camper and I still resonate with that. Just every time I think about that, that made me happy.
Yeah. Giving back.
Yeah.
Making a difference. I love it. Most gifted book or most recommended book you would suggest?
Well, I brought in an old copy of this. This was the first personal development book I ever discovered.
Oh, so good.
Pulling Your Own Strings by Dr. Wayne Dyer.
Yep.
Sadly, he's passed away, but you can see how old it is.
That is amazing.
And I didn't even know there's such things as personal development at the time, but gee, it changed my life.
Yeah, right. Where did you pick this one up?
Oh, I was out motorbike riding.
Of course you were.
And we stopped in this little country town just for coffee, and there happened to be a secondhand bookshop, and I never wander into it, but I did, and that just stood out to me. It had my name on it, obviously. I bought it, and that's where my whole world opened up to personal development and taking back control of your life. Like, you're not here to be a victim. You're here to decide intentionally what you want from life.
Gee, Dr. Wayne Dyer. It's 1979. That's some quality work. He was ahead of his time, that's for sure.
He was, absolutely.
And then if you were to invite 4 people, not family or friends, to dinner, they could be living or dead at the moment, who would you invite?
That would be really hard for me because I would always invite my 4 daughters.
Of course. Simple.
That's just my cherished time. I can't answer that one, Richard.
Too hard?
Yeah.
You're just going to go to the 4 children?
Yeah.
The 4 girls?
Yeah.
All right, we'll do that. And then finally, a guest that you think would be good for us to bring on the show.
I would actually say I recommended this the other night, but Kelly Smith would be great. Now, Kelly's background is she's a lawyer. She's IT. She's been so she was the founder of Centuro, so businesswoman, 60 stores across Australia. She's now doing psychology, fast psychology it's called. But what I've been able to do with Kelly is actually bolt her into helping women break through the barriers that they have, self-imposed barriers. So I'm not a psychologist.
Oh, yeah, on a psychology level. Yeah.
That's right. Kelly's also got a lot of experience in property, and she's helping with interior design in Luana. So she blends really well with that. But from a standing alone perspective, there is, the psychologists want to lay you down on a couch. Let's go back to your childhood. We'll spend 10 years working on this stuff. Kelly's like, let's cut to the pace. What is the problem? Let's resolve it. Let's do it quickly. Anxiety is a big thing that exists too in these, times today. It's a mindset thing. And again, bring someone in that can help you alleviate that quickly, recognize it, work on what needs to be resolved, move on.
Beautiful. Yeah. All right, we'll get Kel on. That'll be wonderful. I can't wait for that. In the meantime, Lorna Willis, thank you so much for coming on to the show. It's been marvelous.
My pleasure. Thanks, Richard.
That was another episode of the Success Times Happiness podcast. If you know an empowering woman, please feel free to share this episode to them. It really makes a difference. Until next time, peace.